two of the four people killed in the occupied West Bank on Tuesday. This was after the first Palestinian general strike in decades ended in violence and bloodshed. More than 160 others were injured, as well as 2 Israeli soldiers. Our correspondent Harry Fawcett was in Bethlehem as it all unfolded. Here is his report.
This is a well-worn road. At one end, Palestinian protesters driven by years of occupation, what 2 recent human rights reports have defined as apartheid, angered and sustained by events in Jerusalem and Gaza. At the other, the implacable, militarized position of the Israeli forces, blocking the way and more. This is how this day would play out. Huge shows of force, pushing back the crowd, then young men in small groups gradually approaching within tens of meters of the Israeli fortifications, peppering them with rocks and glass marbles. The Israeli tactics varying from attempting to rush and detain them, to overwhelming them with tear gas and foul-smelling water, to considerably worse.
So Israeli forces are strengthening their position after those stone throwers got pretty close to the checkpoint here. And as you can see on the road just in front of us, a sniper team has taken up position.
Later, as we reported live, there was no rushing, no show of force, simply sniper fire from a protected position on unarmed protesters. One man fell injured in front of us and was taken out by ambulance. One among many here, among dozens across the occupied West Bank. Near the illegal settlement of Beit El, close to Ramallah, the gunfire was at one point going both ways. This is a rare shooting attack on an Israeli military position during a confrontation, a sign of the seriousness of this current upsurge in violence.
I think our life, it needs just only spark, because we are living under this pressure, we are living under this discrimination regime, oppressive regime. That's the situation.
This had been declared a national strike and a day of rage, observed too in occupied East Jerusalem. Confrontations breaking out at Damascus Gate and in Sheikh Jarrah, where a long simmering protest against forced expulsions of Palestinians has in part fueled this wider violence. In the southern occupied West Bank city of Hebron, a Palestinian was shot dead by Israeli forces who said he was carrying a knife, a homemade gun and an explosive device. A brutal day to add to the tally of the last week. Harry Fawcett, Al Jazeera, Bethlehem in the occupied West Bank.
More with Hoda Abdelhamid now in occupied East Jerusalem. Hoda, on Gaza, first of all, it is a sign of this bizarre, macabre sort of situation of warfare that we see, that we're actually waiting with live cameras to watch a building get hit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, while we're waiting with our cameras to watch that building get hit, imagine all of those families who had to evacuate and who are also waiting to hear what's going to happen to what they called home. Will they ever be able to return? What are they going to tell their children? How are they going to live in the coming, weeks and months, and where are they going to live? It is a very, very sad situation, very stressful for the people who are living in Gaza, and we have seen that unfolding similar scenarios ever since this war has started about 10 days ago now. Gazans seeing really their entire lives, their memories, everything go into ashes. Israel saying it's targeting Hamas assets, Hamas offices, Hamas buildings, sometimes without providing any conclusive proof of that. And many Gazans asking, well, in that case, why aren't you doing pinpointing strikes? Israel is very good at that. It has done that in the previous wars. Why demolishing an entire building and making innocent civilians turn into homeless people just to target maybe one flat?
Extraordinary, isn't it? Hoda, clearly no sign of a ceasefire anywhere at the moment, but you were saying to us earlier that there is at least talk of it.
There's a lot of talk about a ceasefire, especially in the Israeli media. There's also a lot of reports going around saying that that ceasefire would come on Thursday at 6 a.m. local time. That would be 4 GMT. 4 GMT. But there is no confirmation about that so far. Actually, what we hear publicly from both sides is that this operation will continue. The military operations will continue. Israel saying that it will continue until it is satisfied that it has weakened enough Hamas, and Hamas saying that its operations will continue also, and there is no talk about a truce for its part unless it obtains something in return. You know, this is not the first war over the last 10 years, and maybe the fourth war, and Hamas hasn't got anything so far out of it, just periods of calm followed by a war. But life in Gaza has not improved. Actually, according to the UN, it has gotten worse and worse. The blockade has been going on for more than a decade now, 15 years rather. So Hamas, I think, is trying to get something in return. That said, despite all what they're saying publicly, there is international pressure to bring an end to the hostilities. And also you have to put in the equation Prime Minister Netanyahu himself. He is in battle politically. He hasn't been able to form a coalition government. He hasn't been able to get an outright victory in 4 general elections over the past 2 years. But at the moment, he is gaining popularity. Make no mistake, the military operation in Gaza is supported by a good chunk of the Israeli public, especially those living in the south of the country, who say that this should continue as long as possible because they want to see basically Hamas completely destroyed. This is something that maybe Israel doesn't want in itself. It doesn't want to have domestic chaos inside Gaza. So there's a lot of posturing going on, and a lot of domestic politics also going on. And there is an indication that if Prime Minister Netanyahu does this correctly, he could actually gain that support that he was missing to form a coalition government whenever he gets that mandate back.
Hoda Abdelhamid with the latest news and the context for us as well from occupied East Jerusalem. Thank you. We'll return to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict later in this bulletin, but some other news first of all. And Muslim organisations in India are demanding a judicial inquiry into the demolition of a mosque in the state of Uttar Pradesh. The 100-year-old building in the town of Barabanki was brought down on Monday. District officials in that BJP-ruled state say the structure was illegal. There is a legal case over the issue which has been ongoing. Back in 1992, India witnessed one of its worst communal riots after a 16th century mosque was demolished in Uttar Pradesh by activists of the RSS, the parent organisation, if you like, of the BJP. We got some more on this with Javed M. Ansari, who's a political commentator and journalist. He sees this move really as a surprise.
Everybody is preoccupied with generally saving their lives in dealing with this pandemic. And therefore, it is all the more strange and intriguing why the government, the state government, chose to do what it did. It appears to be in direct contravention of a High Court order, which was passed on the 24th of April, which stated that irrespective of whatever directives this court or any lower court may have given with regard to dispossession, demolition, or removal of the mosque, all that will stand in abeyance till the 31st of May. Surprisingly, strangely, the government moved and demolished the mosque. This mosque is just a stone's throw from the provincial capital of Lucknow. It's in Barabanki district. Not much was heard of this. It appears the government now says that there were some residential units that were built along with the mosque, for which there was no provision, there was no permission. But that notwithstanding, the High Court had already given a direction. So therefore, it is